Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our another seminar, webinar on during our May-June spring series here. And I'm going to be talking about gratitude today. And yes, gratitude even in a pandemic. And first of all, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Len Dykstra. I'm one of the social workers here at Niagara North Family Health Team at the Lake and Carleton site in St. Catharines. And my IT support is Emily, who's in the background there. And just to let you know, I cannot see you. You can see me, but I cannot see you. We can't see anybody else. So it's very interesting for me to be presenting to an audience I cannot see. But I know some of you, and I'd like to get to know some of you, and that's how I look at it. So it's kind of an interesting way to present. But so how it's going to go a little bit this afternoon, I'm going to present for about 45 minutes. And if you could hold your chat questions or chat comments till the very end, till the last 15 minutes of the presentation, it goes for a whole hour. And Emily will read them to me, and I'll try to respond to them and kind of go with your questions or your comments. And I actually welcome it as well. So also you're going to need a pen and a paper. I tend to be a bit old-fashioned that way, is that I think it's a really good idea for people to take notes as they are listening to webinars, because it will help you soak this material in a little bit more. So that's what we'll do. So how are we doing for numbers right now, Emily?
We're at 52, so I think it's a good time to start.
All right, wonderful. So yeah, thank you again for joining me this afternoon and taking the time on a subject that I'm very, very interested in. That's the whole idea of the practice of gratitude. I call it a practice. And I got interested in this particular practice when I've been a social worker a long, long time. And for about 6 or 7 years, I was a social worker at a local brain injury clinic. And I worked in the early 2000s with people who had aneurysms, strokes, car accidents, falls, any kind of injury to the brain after the age of 18. And many, if not most of the clients there that I worked with taught me, when you work with people who have sustained very serious injury where they may have died or been seriously impacted, they teach you how to live. And so that for me was a real turnaround period. And it really taught me how to live. And the practice of gratitude became something that I started to do on a daily basis. And I continue to do that. I didn't know that much about it other than perhaps some historical conversations about that and some practices. But it was only in the last probably 10 years or so that there's more research coming out. And I'm going to talk about that today. So I very much believe the practice of gratitude. The other word that I like to use, and I encourage you to use, is appreciation. It's not just a stress management technique. It's really a core value or a core principle that I would encourage you to adopt. And I would encourage you to make as one of your guiding principles, as a way of life, a way of daily living. So they started to get researched more seriously in psychology. It's about the 21st century, since about 2010, 2012, and a lot of this was coming out of the US, California at the time. And the definition that I like is from Sanson and Sampson, and 2010. It says this: the appreciation of what is valuable and meaningful to oneself, and it's a general state of thankfulness and appreciation. So it tends to be, the key words are a state of thankfulness and appreciation. And so I think that's a really, you could really kind of keep those words close to you today, because it's a state. The research is relatively new on gratitude, probably, but basically the research is showing that there's a strong connection, a strong association between gratitude and an overall sense of well-being. And I will talk about that today. And I will also talk about some very specific practices that you can do and incorporate into your life into your family life or into your professional life as well. And actually, you should probably do it everywhere. And a lot of this comes out of positive psychology, which is a branch of cognitive behavioral psychology. And many psychologies kind of evolve and breathe over time. And this is kind of brewing and bubbling over time. Gratitude was often associated with religious practices, spiritual practices, and moral philosophy, and it has some of those roots in that. And I apologize when I have to go for my notes, but I have to go for my notes. So some of the research is showing, and there's over 40 studies and quite large studies about the positive results of practicing gratitude or appreciation. From an emotional perspective, it's more positive feelings that a person experiences. The person is more relaxed when they practice gratitude and appreciation. They're more resilient. And that's why I say in a pandemic, it's a good practice to have, because we really require resilience during a pandemic. But whenever a personal storm hits our life or a community storm hits our life, we will need some resilience to bounce back from that and to bounce forward. And the practice of gratitude shows that. Interesting benefit is people are less envious. And that's kind of an interesting way to live, less enviously. And they also focus on happier memories versus the upsetting memories. They focus on happy memories. From a social benefit, they show that people who practice gratitude are actually more social. They tend to be kinder. They tend to have deeper, more meaningful relationships. Doesn't mean they have tons of those, but with the ones that they do have are very deep and very personal. They may have more friendships. People are going to be attracted to you when you practice this. And they have healthier marriages, which is a really interesting benefit. From a personality perspective as well, these 40 studies, it showed that people were less materialistic. And I'll show you some of the practices, which is going to sort of demonstrate why you're going to be focusing on the very smaller things in life rather than the larger things. They're more less self-centered and more other-centered. They're more optimistic, so it tends to provide you a certain kind of immunity. And certainly these days, we want to be as optimistic as we can be, still realistic. A sense of increased self-esteem and value of self. And also there tends to be connection to being more spiritual. From a health perspective, they're better sleepers. It's kind of an interesting, they sleep better. I guess if you're focusing on what you're grateful for versus what you need to, what you're worrying about, it's going to be helpful practice. Does this take it away? This is not a magic pill, I say to people. It's a good practice. They're less sick. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on, because I believe when we practice gratitude, we kick in certain kind of hormones. And when we're stressed, we kick in hormones, which makes us more vulnerable to being ill, to catch something. It builds immunity. There's longevity. You actually live longer. That's kind of an interesting, that's a pretty good side benefit. I always tell people, this is a really good car to buy. This is a good thing to buy. Increased energy, and you're also more motivated to do exercise. From a career perspective, it shows improved networking. Again, you're going to like to work with somebody who's pretty grateful for what you're doing and grateful for working with you and working collaboratively. There's some good goal achievement, a better decision-making, and increased productivity. If you're grateful, you're happier, and you're going to be producing more. The research shows that gratitude basically makes us happier and improves our health, our relationships, our emotions, personality, and career. makes us kinder, more trusting, more appreciative. Gratitude makes people want to be around us. When very few people want to say, I want to hang around an ungrateful person. That's just really kind of a fun person to be with. But someone who shows gratefulness and appreciation often is at a person that is kind of a good person to be around. Some of the other research, again, multiple studying, is keeping a gratitude journal. So they studied people keeping this journal. So counting your blessings versus your burdens. This is the language that they use. And what they showed was that people had less, who practiced their counting their good things, had less physical symptoms. They spent more time exercising. They had less physical pain, and their sleep improved, and had generally increased energy. The other thing that they showed, and I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, the gratitude visit, where you actually go visit somebody. Maybe now we can't do that, obviously, face-to-face, and with stay-at-home restrictions, but you can call somebody, you could send a text message, or you can FaceTime them, and perhaps one day we can do the visit face-to-face, where you actually make a visit with somebody to thank them for what they did in your life, or the different parts that they played currently or in the past. And it showed less depression symptoms by 35%. And that practice of the visits continued by at least 1/3 of the group. So that's pretty good research. The other thing that they, one second. There is a, in 2003, Eastern Washington University came up with the GRAT, it's called. It's called the Gratitude, Resentment, and Appreciation Test. It's kind of an interesting name. It sounds like a gnat, which we got lots of in the city these days, but it's called the GRAT, the Gratitude, Resentment, and Appreciation Test. And again, they showed the following 4 characteristics who scored high in this test. Grateful individuals do not feel deprived and otherwise have a sense of feeling abundant. They feel like they got a lot of good things. Despite sometimes real hardship and difficulty, they still feel like they got good things. They often acknowledge others and other people in their lives for making their situation the way it is. It's often, sometimes you find that with athletes or stars or whatever, when they get an award, they will often thank their team or their coach or their parents or their friends or their colleagues for where they're at. So often it is a shared kind of experience. They often experience the small pleasures in life. And I'm going to talk about that as a practice of the small pleasures all day long, every day, every week. So basically, you're increasing the frequency of feeling good. And therefore, it has a payoff, a cumulative payoff as your days and weeks go on. I've been practicing since the early 2000s, a daily morning practice. And I have many other practices, but it's to be extremely grateful for my first cup of coffee. So when I go downstairs, I lift up the lid and smell the coffee grounds, and I turn it on. Next thing I'm thankful for is my warm shower that I can have every morning to start my day. And the third one sounds a bit odd, but having been in a third world country, is I have a toilet that flushes into a sewer system that's very good, and is not somebody else's drinking water. Every day I practice that for over 15, maybe longer than that. And there's many other practices, but it's a really interesting practice. To me, I find it it's like a guide to help me in the day. The other thing that they found with this GRAT was many of the people who used the appreciation and thankfulness on a daily basis began to really develop a close relationship with that practice and saw the value of it and how it contributed to their positive emotions. And I also believe it contributes to other people's positive emotions. It's a ripple effect. University of California at Riverside did, and again showed lots of studies, increased alertness, higher levels of joy and pleasure, optimism, increased improved immune system, improved blood pressure, less aches and pains, and people were more inclined to live a healthy lifestyle. So it became part of a lifestyle that they were using. Again, this is not just a tip in the strategy, it's actually a life practice. And again, often the third benefit that Dr. Emmons came up with, that people felt less lonely because they were doing more bids to be grateful every day, and also to grateful to other people. So they would be grateful on a daily basis. So better social interaction, more forgiveness, more compassion and kindness to others, and also more generous. I'm just going to mention briefly, looking at my time here. Yeah, Dr. Sonia Labrutsky out of California also did an interesting study, and she had two groups. One group lists 5 reasons to be grateful for 10 weeks on a daily basis. 5 reasons to be grateful for 10 weeks. Group 2, 5 reasons to be annoyed or bothered for 10 weeks. How's that for a fun one? Some of us might be quite good at that. Obviously, they found that the ones in the group 1 who were grateful had the better benefits and lived healthier, less physical symptoms and better positive emotions. And another study was done about 844 words, and to pick top likable traits out of those 844 words, and they did. And the word ungrateful was one of the lowest, at the lowest percentage. So most of us really may not consider ourselves ungrateful, but we certainly recognize ungratefulness in other people. So it was considered a very unlikable trait. I actually call, and I've been calling this for many, many years, and I'm hoping you can see this, vitamin G. Vitamin G. And I really like that analogy. Take your daily vitamin. Some of you are regular vitamins, take regular vitamins, and I call it vitamin G. I had someone give this to me before the presentation. I picked it up and it said, gratitude is a vitamin for the soul. This person knew I was doing this presentation today, and I'm very thankful for that. One of the other things I often say is that we live in a bit of a happiness culture, but I also call it a bit of a complaint culture. People can agree with me or not agree with me. That's worth talking about another time. But often I think we sometimes can lean towards the complaint. It almost feels naturally versus it's more unnatural to be grateful. I also think that we are bombarded all day long with ads that tell us our hair is not polished enough, our teeth aren't clean enough or white enough, our car isn't nice enough, our house isn't good enough, it's not enough. And I believe that decades now of this kind of thinking has really created almost a culture that's not always good for us, our well-being. So again, I'm really trying to sell you a product today that very much I believe in, and the research is showing that out. Also, the happiness culture, I talked about this in a recent presentation. I talk about this with many clients and others. I believe that sometimes the whole idea that we must be happy every day, all day is not necessarily realistic. And the whole idea we want to be calm, we want to be at peace, we want, and a quote that a lot of the researchers came up with, and to summarize, it says, it's not happiness that brings us gratitude, it's gratitude that brings us happiness. It's not happiness that brings us gratitude. It's not that if I'm happy first, then I'm grateful. It's grateful, then I'm going to be happier or happy. The other thing that I think that kicks in is that when we are feeling good and we are feeling grateful, I think it kicks in a hormone called oxytocin. And I believe this is good medicine for us. Whereas when we're stressed and upset and complaining, I'm not against complaints. I think there's a place for some complaint. I think there's a place for some venting. But if it becomes your lifestyle and your life practice, it's going to have a toll on you physically, mentally, socially, cognitively. So the whole idea of you're trying to kick in some oxytocin here. All right, how are we doing for time? So how to practice gratitude. So there's many different ways of practicing gratitude on making it part of your life. And I'm going to give you a whole bunch of different ideas. But you don't necessarily need to practice all of these. I don't necessarily practice all of these. This is some interesting research, and I say get creative about it as you want. And even if you just start with one thing, I would go with that, and you can build from there. Many people start off slow. They will tell me that they will write down 3 things a day, and I think that's a wonderful start, as long as you can keep it up. So the whole idea of doing it on a regular basis is considered by the researchers and by psychologists and by others, and by me today, is to try to integrate this into your life as part of your life. So the big thing that's a very common one is the gratitude journal. You're actually getting this journal, you're buying it somewhere, and you're writing in it every day. So they often encourage you to pick a time of the day when you have time to reflect, whether it's a weekly thing or it's a daily thing, and you just write in there. Some people are writers. They do this in almost a journaling, writing a story fashion. And it could be people, places, experiences, or things. So often whenever I often do a presentation on gratitude, and I ask people to fill out the gratitude jar, usually 3/4 of it's going to be my family and my kids and my parents and my those kinds of things. And I think those are wonderful things. I often say, let's sharpen the pencil a little bit more than that to be more specific. So it can be people, it could be places, it could be things, experiences, and learnings. And this could be small, this can be large, and that's in a written form. Not everybody is a writer. Not everybody likes to write. Some of you are natural writers, and you're going to do that. Some of this is something that you can do well, and you're good at. You should do it, and you're going to do it. You're going to keep almost like a daily journal. Some people do it at the end of the day. Some people do it at the beginning of the day. Some people do this as a family. The other one is what we call a gratitude partner. So you actually have somebody in your life, your personal life or your professional life, or both. And this person it's sort of like a buddy when you do exercise. This is sort of like a gratitude buddy, or friend, or partner, and perhaps it's your spouse, perhaps somebody at work. So they can help you foster your gratefulness and your appreciation. So they could also encourage you and motivate you. So sometimes asking somebody to help you with that, to keep you online, to help you focused, is a really good idea. They may also help you, give you fresh eyes and a lens when you have a difficulty or a problem. Rather than it's spinning around in your head, you're actually talking to somebody else and say, well, how about let's try this. Well, what about some of the other things? This is not to minimize. This is not to minimize some of the difficult things we're going into. This is by no means doing that. It goes back, I think there's a place for some venting and some complaining, but then what? So having these partners can be very, very helpful. The other one is to actually express the gratitude. So you're not just writing it down, you're not just doing it to yourself or your partner, you're expressing this. So this is an either face-to-face, this is a phone call. You're gonna pick up your phone. You're going to pick up your phone and you're going to text somebody, or you're going to send a letter. Any other time, you're going to make a face-to-face visit, and you're going to express your appreciation and your thanks. Perhaps it's a parent, perhaps it's a sibling, Many of you did this on Mother's Day. Many of you did this for your mom, your mother, or your grandmother, or a friend who's somebody who's like a mom to you. And maybe a former teacher. Many people have that. They wish they could, and often I say, well, why don't you? It could be a former manager. It could be someone who said something to you at one point that kind of steered your life in a different direction. And describe in detail, either verbally or written, what he or she did for you, how it affected your life, and how often you remember your kindness. I remember an HR director that I had at one time way back in the day, and I was thinking about going back to school for my master's degree, and I was expressing how old I was going to be by that time. I was going to be done. And she said, well, either way, you're going to be that age. You might as well be done with a master's degree. It was like something clicked, and I'm forever grateful for her. She has since passed, but I'm forever grateful. If you're not a detailed person with a letter, and you're not someone who's going to write these letters, 3 pages, 2 pages, whatever, just make it very short. Just do it. It's good for them, and it's good for you. The other one is also by expressing gratitude for not only just family or friends, but it's for what I call the background people often in our lives, or strangers. And this may be bus drivers, sales clerks, cleaning crew, book authors, cab drivers, receptionists, so on and so forth. I'm a huge believer in doing this. One, because I've seen many of these people who work front lines. When I worked in one of my other jobs, I worked with many, many people. We would describe them as the working poor. So they would be front lines at fast food restaurants or sales clerks. And they told me in sessions how poorly they got treated. In addition to the poor treatment they may have received earlier in life by family or friends or partners or whatever, they would get on a daily basis. And I know this to be true, particularly during a pandemic, that many, many people are thanking people, but many people, and I'll tell you about an experience I had recently later on in the session. When I started to hear that, again, probably 10 years ago, I made it a specific point to be very thankful and grateful to every person at a reception area, every person at the sales clerk at the grocery store I go to. It's the only place I go to these days. I went to a grocery store the other day, and one of the salad balls fell off as I was walking by, and I put it back up. I should have washed it. And the guy came over to me, one of the produce guys says, "Thank you very much for putting that back. We have a ghost that puts them down on the floor." And I thought that was kind of, I said, "Well, thank you for saying thank you." It was just going round and round like this, but it was really cool. So thanking the people who cross your path very briefly. So often I say to people, they're just crossing your path very briefly, but show appreciation. And you never know. I'm amazed how many people will say that they have these customers that come to their window or their door that they look forward to them because they make their day. Or people who can see when there's call display, oh, good, I get to talk to so-and-so, versus 5 of the other people who were absolutely miserable. So I'm going to keep moving. Where are we on for time? 15 more minutes, so we'll take your questions. Consider a gratitude jar. This is what I have right here. Gratitude jar. And having this in your workplace or in your family place. And this is where you drop things, little pieces of paper, and you drop them in there. And then you could do it at the end of the day, at the end of the week. Everybody can kind of share what's going on, and you could post them. Some people use a box, some people use a drawer. This was quite popular a few years ago, the gratitude jars. I tend to not use that, but many other people from a family perspective do use it. So again, I always say to people, what works for you? This is really great now. I think to teach children and teens to be grateful is a really, really good life skill. And I think it provides some immunity. Oh yes, I got to tell you, this is quite funny. So several years ago when I did these presentations in my previous workplace, this is what they used to call me, a gratitude. I started to get a nickname because I was sort of like this ferocious gratitude guy. I thought it was quite hilarious. You might want to come up with your own nickname. Have a gratitude bulletin board. Post on your bulletin board or your whiteboard in your house or your workplace what you're thankful for. This could be done on your own. It could be done as a family or work team. Can be changed once a month, once a week. But again, it's very visual. It's really interesting to hear and see what people do. We do that on occasion here in our workplace, on our whiteboard in the lunchroom. And I think it's a really neat practice, and I would encourage you to do it. Grounding, when you're going through a really difficult time in your life, and to keep, when you have a record of all these things, when you have a record of all the things that you're grateful for, or you have it all on paper, you wrote it down somewhere, when you're having a difficult day or a difficult week or a difficult season in your life, you can go back to these things. And I say that they act as your water wings, your life jacket, or your life preserver during difficult times. So again, we're living through difficult times now. And I say to people, this presentation isn't about we're not grateful for the pandemic. We use a practice of gratitude to help us in the pandemic. When I worked at the brain injury clinic, I didn't say to them, are you grateful for your brain injury so you can now be more grateful? That's ridiculous. We're in the experience, we can find that gratitude can ground us. So the whole idea of that we are using this record, keeping this record, this journal, these notes, these daily practices as a way to scaffold our lives, to provide us that grounding, that difficulty. Pay attention to how often you say thank you. This was kind of an exercise that I've often encouraged people when I've done presentations on this topic, but even on almost any topic. How often do you say thank you? And people will go, well, they have to be genuine. I'm going, well, you say, I love you. Does it always have to be the most genuine thing in the whole wide world? We certainly want to be as genuine as you can be, but pay attention when was the last time. And if you're with somebody who never says thank you to you, you might want to reevaluate how that's going for you. But really trying to look at how often you say thank you, and a genuine thank you. They're very small but powerful words. And almost every language has them. There's gracias, there's merci, there's dankjewel. Almost every language has it. And I would encourage you to really pay attention to your number of thank yous. One of the other things that I encourage from a practice point of view, and it's, can you see this?
Yep. Oh, a little the other way. Yep.
Yep, got it?
Yep.
All right, so this is about doing this on a small scale. So it's really by looking at the practice of your senses, your 5 senses. So really trying to have this practice of gratitude on many different levels. So from when it comes to smell, how many of you like the smell and really start to appreciate the smell of newly washed sheets and pillowcases? It's almost like we sleep better when they're newly washed, or this fresh smell. Or a wood fire, a wood burning stove, walking around and a campfire of some kind of wood burning stove. Most people really like that smell. I love going into bakeries because I love the smell of the freshly baked food or freshly baked bread. For some people, the smell of lilacs, you're going to be very close, soon you're going to smell. To really appreciate that smell. Often they will be in the moments. This is often what I call almost like a mindfulness practice as well as a gratefulness, but it's really almost stopping. Remember this term, stop and smell the roses, smell the flowers. This is the same idea, stop and smell everything. When it comes to taste, really savoring and appreciating the taste. It could be, I'm a big lover of anything cinnamon. I've actually brought some cinnamon, which I'm going to enjoy after this presentation. It's my treat and reward. But almost anything with the taste and smell of cinnamon. And it could be a glass of cold water. It could be a glass of cold beer. The advertisers have really gotten into the whole idea of a cold beer or a glass of wine is so good for you. But often it's appreciating, or the smell and taste of chicken soup, or a fresh cake. For hearing, and again, I grew up in a household where my father only had 15% hearing. So I was very, very aware of how important our hearing is. And if you don't have it, how much you miss it. So birds singing, how many of you are get annoyed with the birds singing so early in the morning, but how many of you are appreciating the birds singing? Or a train whistle. That's something very magical about a train whistle, or those of us who live near the canal, the ship in the canal, the horn, or anyone with music, a saxophone. I say the saxophone outside is nothing short of the most grateful thing in the whole world. For some of you who like animals, a cat purring. So again, if we just try to appreciate and be thankful. Touch. For many people, it's fleece. Fleece is very, very common one. People love. I don't know of anybody who doesn't like fleece. Maybe some people don't like it. A pet's fur, warm gloves, anything with touch. The same with sight. It could be a beautiful painting, a beautiful sunset, anything. I tend to, again, with an orange, I find I try to appreciate this whenever I have an orange, is the peel that protects the juices, the smell, and the smell lingers on my fingers after I peel it, and the taste of it. So it's really trying to get all day long these special, you're getting good, you're getting much frequency, a lot of frequency of gratitude to you all day long. All right. How are we doing for a couple more minutes? So the other thing to consider with gratefulness, I call that, remember, vitamin G, the benefits in a marriage. So often I say to people, spend some time, if you are in a marriage or you're in a friendship or whatever it might be, how often you say thank you to your spouse? How often are you saying thank you to them for the things that they're doing, for them as a parent, as a partner to you, helping you and supporting you? Often they say the increased gratefulness has really shown to be almost like marriage glue. It's not the only thing, but it's marriage glue. Often I say with children and teens particularly, and so often I see teens, and a lot of times we're grumbling at them and they're not doing this, is to be thankful. Increasing your thankfulness with teens. I see it as glue. Sometimes with our parents or our grandparents, I call them living eulogies. Don't wait till they die to say all the things you want to do. Do a living eulogy. We did that several years ago. My father was deaf most of his life, all his life, obviously, with hearing aids. But we had to write things down when we did speeches. And then we realized we were actually doing living eulogies at their anniversary. That's what it was, as we told stories. So gratitude with your friends. I often call them my vitamins. I will say, you're my vitamin G. And they'll go, what are you talking about? I'm going, you're my vitamin G. You're good for my health. So the same with our colleagues, is to express thankfulness for them being our colleague and for them being a part of the team that we're doing. We're in this together. You watch in a couple of years, when you think about this pandemic, we're going to go, we remember where we were and who we were with. forever during this time. And often I say, well, how will they remember you? How will you be remembered? All right, so then gratitude gatherings, when you're at a gathering, when you get to gather again. So many people will practice, many religious groups will have the practice of giving grace, gracias, grace at the beginning or the end of a meal. Some people do that on special occasions. Some people do that at every occasion. They're actually encouraging, some of the research is encouraging the practice, even a secular grace, which is to be giving thanks. Religious groups will give thanks to God or to a spiritual being, but you can also just have that time to do thank you. Many people will do this at family gatherings or weddings and stuff, but don't limit to that. A gratitude game. Often I say to people, practice a gratitude game with this I Spy with my little eyes. Something that I'm thankful for is the most, and then people have to guess. And the thing that I'm most thankful for today is what? And you won't believe what I'm thankful for. So it's kind of a game that you can play with your partner or your colleagues. And often I say to people, it could be the smallest things. I'm a regular walker, and what I am very, very thankful for is my really good runners and the man who made my orthotics so that I could walk. The other one, I'm going to be done in a couple of minutes. The other one is gratitude gifts. Some people are good with words. Some people are good with gifts. Some people are good with gifts and words. And so sometimes people, it's the gift of gratitude with a token of thankfulness. For no other reason than you're grateful. So it's kind of interesting when you give people gifts or compliments, they'll go, are you dying? Because only dying people do this kind of stuff. They're giving you, what do you mean you're giving me a present? It's not even my birthday, it's not Christmas, you're giving me a gift. I just wanted to give you a gift. What's good? They think something's wrong with you because it's not part of our culture. So often a gift of time or thing or a donation or some kind. Dr. Martin Seligman, big on optimists and pessimists, talks about the gratitude visit and how powerful that is. What else? Okay. Be grateful. This is a really, really important distinction. Be grateful for getting through the difficult period, the time, or the situation, not necessarily for it. Does that make sense? So often people will say, my parents met during the war, and you don't say, well, we're grateful for the war, they're because they met. No, the war happened, and we're grateful that we met in this time. So it's really important sometimes that we don't always have to be that silver lining thing. It's the overall practice of gratitude. Sometimes, this is one thing that's really what I found, is sometimes we have to let people be gracious to us. This is for all you givers out there. You're really good at giving. You're not very good at receiving. And I really believe sometimes we need to let people be gracious to us. Let people be kind to us. Let people, because it's really important to be on the receiving end of this as well. And the other one that often I say is be gracious to yourself. And that is a show appreciation to yourself. That's a whole new topic about people who are hard on themselves, but it's the whole idea of being gracious to yourself. I think, yes, I want to just tell you a little story, and then I'm going to, just be nice. Can you see that? Yeah, so on Saturday, I was at the grocery store. I'm going to tell you a story that you can start your chat if you want. I was at the grocery store, and I go do groceries at 8 o'clock Saturday mornings. And always very interesting to observe grocery stores. It's the only store I go into. And people were quite grumpy. I mean, customers, not the sales clerks. Customers were quite grumpy that morning. Lots of complaining in the aisles, one or two. And then a couple of older people quite grumbling at that the line wasn't moving fast enough. And I could feel a little burn, but I wasn't going to say anything. Most of the young people were the cash were young people. And most of the people grumbling were old people. and older people. That's just what I observed. Doesn't mean it happens all the time. So as I was in the parking lot bagging up my groceries and ready to leave, I saw the manager and I thanked him. I says, "Thank you, manager. I don't know you, but I see that you are the manager here. I want to thank you for all the hard work that you've done for 14 months of must be very difficult work." And he says, "Yes, it's been very, very difficult. Absolutely, you have unbelievable." And I said, "Just let you know, there's grumpy people in there. Go in, heads up." And he says, "Oh yes, they're very, very grumpy lately, and they're taking it out on the young people who, some of them are not even vaccinated yet, and are coming in 14 months later, still day in and day out, and taking." And so that's why I want to end this with just be nice. Up there we are. All right, so that 47 minutes went very quickly, and now I'm going to take some of your chats.
Fantastic. Thank you, Len.
Thanks,
so we
Emily.
have Kelly. She said that she loves the vitamin G and she loves the jar idea. She uses a chalkboard in her kitchen.
Yes, that's a really good idea. I like the idea that it's very visual. And if you live with other people, it's going to help them. They're practicing it as well. And if you live alone, it's good practice for you as well. So it has multiple benefits for you personally. Even if you live alone, I would encourage you to do it and write it quite big, and try to make room for more of it later in the day.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kelly. Now we have Anne. She says, "Thank you for presenting today and sharing your insights and knowledge associated with the gratefulness. It was really nice to spend an hour thinking about a positive attitude."
Thank you. I appreciate that. And have a great rest of the day.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne. We have Christina. She says she's thankful for this course and thank you.
Yes. And often I say to people, when you say great, I'm really grateful, often it's really about being full of grace and being thankful. Yes.
Oh, thank you for your praise, Christina. We appreciate it. We have Karen. She says, "Really enjoyed this, even though I'm a very happy person and grateful person. Thank you." You mentioned Martin Seligman? Seligman, yes. Found his book Flourish to be excellent. Even though
yes.
she doesn't read self-help type books often, she'll try to be try the gratitude jar with her grandsons. They're 11 and 8. Oh, good.
This is the book that I have, and so you probably have it as well. I love the book, and I love the way he writes. It's called Flourish by Martin Seligman. And so it's a great book, and he writes as a researcher, but he writes as what I call a normal human being, and he makes it very realistic. And so it's a very interesting read.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Karen. And then Brandy, she asked, "Can you recommend some further reading?" Well, I guess that kind of answered our question.
Yes, well, it's yes, I would think this is a good book. It's not particular to gratefulness itself, but I would maybe be looking at some of the authors that I mentioned earlier, Sonia, Dr. Emmons, and a few others. Look up some of those books.
I can also send you an email later, Brandy, with some information. Well, thank you. Anne asks, "How do you distinguish the difference between gratefulness and being a positive thinker?"
Yes, well, I think a gratefulness, that's a good question. A gratefulness is really about, not necessarily, it's just about showing, it's about appreciation. I think that they could be overlapped. I'm not necessarily sure that they cancel each other out, but gratefulness is probably, I would see much more as a daily practice of appreciation, where positive is positive included in that, which is about a certain kind of perspective. It's about really, like an orange, I can be very positive about this orange, or I can be very, very grateful for it on many different levels. So there's a distinction about that.
Oh, that was a great question, Anne.
Good question. I don't know if I answered it well enough, but.
Oh, try. We have Marie. She says, "Thank you so much. In her experience, people view you as a lesser or a weak person if you're grateful and thankful. How do you counter?"
Yes, I guess a lot of times I say it doesn't really matter what other people think, it's what you think. And so often, some people say, believe, in some cultures, but I gotta be careful about that. But some people think that saying a thank you or is a vulnerability. I believe try not to worry what other people think and just go with what you believe is good for yourself. And if they don't really like it, that's up to them. It really shows that this is what your choice is. I believe that a lot of times our choices may not be the most popular choices, but they're the best choices for ourselves. And to give yourself permission to think outside the box that we often get put into, whether we realize it or not. So it's really giving yourself permission to just be you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Marie. That was great insight and a great question. Vicky, she likes to say thank you. You're very helpful. So we appreciate that.
Thanks, Vicky.
We have Elizabeth. She says, thank you. She's going to start a small gratitude journal. She loves to write, but the particular focus will keep her from verbosity.
Yeah, a lot of times the writing is not for everyone, like I said, and sometimes sometimes I say just keeping a list for some of you might be a really good way to start, or even a mental list.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for joining us as well. We've got Patricia. She says, very grateful to you for reminding us of how to stay grateful every day. So many wonderful ideas. Merci, grazie.
Yes, thank you. I love, if you Google gratitude, there's actually one in many different languages. I actually thought I had it. In many languages, but I didn't. I just had different words. But there is one with different languages that I did at one time post and hang out in my office, because I thought the different languages, it's interesting that there's different languages all using different words around gratitude, that every culture, every language has one. So it might be something to put up. It's kind of fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you for your input, Patricia. Brandy says, thank you very much. Everything was very appreciated. Andrea says, thank you for your presentation today. I'm sure it will help to light up a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of this stuff may be refreshers to some of you. You have never heard it before. Often I say sometimes it's when we hear it and how we hear it and when we're ready to hear it and who says it. And so I'm glad that we had such a good response. And this is going to be on video as well, that it's being recorded right now. It's going to be able to, you can tell other people to go in a day or so, you can go and Google it on our website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the feedback, Andrea. Christina, she says she recommends the course, The Science of Wellbeing, given by Coursera online.
There we are.
Yeah, perfect. It's a good recommendation for us. Thank you, Christina. John Clark, who says, thanks for another excellent seminar, Len. I'm very grateful for what you and the Niagara North team does.
Thanks, John. Love it.
Excellent. So we're coming up, kind of leading to the end, 5 minutes. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, we've got Eve. Thank you so much for a very positive presentation. So much appreciated, particularly at this time.
Yes, it's interesting because I titled the presentation, Even in a Pandemic. And what I have found personally, I can only talk personally, is that the personal practice of gratitude, not only the 3 in the morning, but almost all day long. When someone asks me how I'm doing, I say, all things considered, I'm doing quite well. And I believe that's the practice of just being thankful. I told the manager that I am thankful that I can go to a grocery store and get almost anything that I want. And I've always said that in many, many other countries, you go to the marketplace, there's a good chance you can get bombed. And here in North America, you know, I can get almost anything I need. My chances of being harmed are slim to none. I practice safe, but it's really about being grateful for what we have here. Because I think that's really important, and it helps ground us during this time.
Thank you so much, Eve. We have Guylaine. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. She says, thank you for your presentation. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Tony, says, excellent points to remember. Thanking others makes me feel great and has positive impact on others too. I love the concept of the journal, and thank you.
Yeah, and I say to people that those health benefits are pretty hard to shake. They're pretty hard to say, yeah, no, I'm not interested. But there's just such positive health, and study after study shows it, of how good it is for us. And again, also in our family relationships and our personal relationships, is the practice of gratitude and appreciation.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Tony. And Shauna, she says, this has been very helpful. Thank you. I've been trying to practice gratitude, but found I was having the duh feeling that, of course, I'm grateful. But you helped me realize that the little things, blessings in disguise. Sorry for spelling. She's very grateful for the technology.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's interesting that I don't see you. I don't see any of you. And I don't know if I mentioned this at the very beginning, but I've mentioned it before, that I kind of imagine these are people that I know or that are watching, and people I'd like to get to know. And the rest of you are in your pajamas and having tea or something like that. So I'm imagining all of you right now leaving here feeling good. So.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Shauna. Brandy's asking if you could include some literature on studies and effects. I think we can get that to you later. I can email you out. Shauna says she dressed up, thought you'd be able to see her.
Yeah, that's funny because I've had that with the one I did last week as well. People thought I'd be able to see them, and they dressed themselves up. If you got, it's like an outing, right? And but I appreciate that in my imagination.
So Kelly says, me too. So I think a lot of people kind of thought they.
Yeah, it's quite funny because before the presentation, I asked my colleague how my hair was.
Well,
she said fine. She said fine. So, and I said thank you.
And Brandy says she was grateful for a reason to dress up.
Oh, that's hilarious. And I see someone says they cleaned their room too.
Shauna cleaned her room.
Good. Yeah, that's wonderful. Having a sense of humor, that could be a completely different workshop.
Yeah.
But having a light, often I use the term lightheartedness. I don't always use sense of humor because I like the term lighthearted versus heavy-hearted or hard-hearted or anything like that. But I think having a lighthearted approach to things is actually really good for us as well.
Yeah, and like Eb said, she wore her jewelry and perfume for it even. So yeah. A lot of us got to get dressed up for it. Nice little group. All right. So we are kind of coming to the end. Does anybody else have any more questions or comments?
Yeah, one last chance.
Last chance? No? All right. Well, I'd like to say thank you. Oh, Susan says thank you. A real feel-good seminar.
Yeah, it's sort of like a group hug without all knowing each other. Yes. And maybe Emily, at the very end, you can just tell people where they can find this so they can tell other people.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'd like to send a huge thank you to Len for facilitating the group today. We're very grateful for you to be here. And we're grateful to everybody that came and participated and watched the seminar. Thank you so much. We hope you got to take some real good knowledge out of it and some tips. And you can find all of the recordings for this and the previous groups online at our website, NiagaraNorthFHT.ca. And it'll be under patient resources. So you'll be able to find them there.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily, for all your help. Everybody else have a wonderful day.